Formal. Thank you, kind of. This will be really informal. So if you have any specific questions, please go ahead and get those ready and I can be responsive. But let's get folks to about 9:05. Okay, good morning, good people. Feel free to make yourself as comfortable as you need. This is, like I said, a really informal space. Just want to give people a chance to ask any questions and also give folks access to a recording. So if they couldn't join us this morning, that they could ask questions. I see there are a couple of folks on the call. So I'll start by just giving a little bit of background of how the village landed with this amazing opportunity to provide some very targeted learning competencies for executive level leaders within the nonprofit sector, as well as folks who are responsible for a body of work. So one of our current board members is an African American entrepreneur, and he has been watching the work of the village and been curious with me really since the beginning. Where could there be some more deeper investment that really drives impact? So not necessarily the grant making dollars, not necessarily the episodic workshops, but he's an entrepreneur, right? And so his thought was really, could the village be a version of a corner to corner? Well, we know that there are some other complexities there, including how do we partner and collaborate and support as opposed to compete in a space. And so there were multiple iterations, multiple conversations, and what really got him excited was the idea of developing a learning cohort, and the cohort experience was really important to him, making sure that he identifies that one of the places, one of the attributes that's allowed him to be so successful as an entrepreneur is that he's been surrounded by other entrepreneurs, and he's had amazing mentors, and he's been in business with folks and they've sort of journeyed together. And so bringing in that cohort model as a priority, that's number one. And then the second is having someone that has really straddled the line of nonprofit board engagement and board engagement at a pretty high level, like HCA board, right? And entrepreneurship. And so there is an amazing brother here, local, Alfonso Alexander, who had done some work previously with this board chair or this board member. And he wanted to bring him to the table to see if there was something that essentially we could co-create together. So I'm telling us this journey so that we know this wasn't just sort of a haphazard offering. The initial sort of pitch, of course, was deeply rooted in what he's experienced as an HCA board member, what he's seen in corporate learning environments, right, and work environments, as well as his support that he's been able to provide locally to some nonprofits. We made sure to tailor the experience. There was at one point in time where I said, you know what, I need to sort of clear my brain of everything that you've shared, and let me tell you what I know to be true about our sector, about our village members, etc. And we really did co-create the modules together. And so that feels really important to bring and to share in this space, that it is not a cookie cutter approach. We are using competencies that are industry standards. Very specifically, Lipscomb hosted a nonprofit competency sort of scorecard, and they piloted a program where they maybe, let's say there's 20 core competencies, right? These competencies were identified and targeted based on what nonprofit executives demonstrate and need as an industry standard, right? So not just what we're seeing in a black hole or what we're experiencing, but similar to how Fortune 100 companies will have top CEO core competencies. There is a impact sector, a nonprofit sector version of that. We have leveraged that research, Dr. Alexander's expertise in the corporate field, and what we have seen as best practices, what we've heard from funders, what we've heard from you all, to really develop the modules associated with this body of work. And so I think it breaks down to about 7 sessions total. I am talking a little slow right now, y'all, while I'm pulling up the PowerPoint so I can share a few things with you. Um, and our goal is there's a couple layers to this. One, how do we create a learning community amongst people who are responsible at different levels within their organization, but there is an overall general sense of accountability or responsibility, whether that is programmatically, like if there is a particular program that you manage or a particular grant that you're responsible for, right? Maybe a particular pillar of your org's priorities. What's the learning journey for you to more comprehensively understand the larger ecosystem of the impact sector through the lens of your real work, right? I have been in tons of learning spaces, including this week, where there's a lot of theory that is shared, and it's a wonderful tool for me to file somewhere in my imaginary file cabinet and hope that I can remember where I placed it to then be able to extract that learning later versus being in a experience where we are pulling from and drawing from what is real for you in real time. And that's really the sweet spot here, which is why we have sort of those two tracks, right? One is more of that sort of management level. And I talked through sort of what those examples look like: responsible for a grant, responsible for a pillar, responsible for maybe a department, right? Responsible for a particular budget or subsection of a budget, or at that higher sort of executive level where you have the perspective of the entire organization, as well as maybe the responsibility for the entire organization's budget. We are building this experience in a way that each module not only builds upon itself, but you are able to use your real time examples as the case studies. And I think that's what makes this really unique. And while I was willing to say, yes, I would love to co-facilitate, when you can pull in real examples that you need thought partnership around, when you can bring to the group a case study that we can use to help problem solve and sort of learn and share together. Think about maybe the best group project that you ever participated in. There's only a handful that I can think of for myself. But when I consider how maybe my TA was deeply involved and hands-on and sort of serves as a consultant for us, right, through that group project. That's sort of the kind of experience that we're curating here. We ask that there is commitment to engage in at least one session, and we'll clarify together as a group what that needs to look like from someone who is either co-responsible for a budget with you or oversees, is your direct supervisor. We want to bring in that sort of shared ownership and accountability as a part of not the entire experience, but a moment in time that makes sense for you as a professional, enough that the goodness that you are extracting as a part of the learning cohort also then lives with someone else. There is at least one other person in your organization, whether it's at your board, whether it's a volunteer, or whether it is your direct supervisor, who shared in this learning experience at least at one touch point, enough that they are invested in what is possible as you are forward thinking about the opportunities that the learning has positioned you and your organization for. The last thing I'll mention before I show some of the modules and then open it up for any Q&A is that we want to be really intentional about building an opportunity for us to learn and grow together. And so we will ask that the commitment is really to the learning community, that we are investing in you as an individual and not just your organization. We appreciate you coming wearing your CEO hat. That was part of the profile for the participation. But we are investing core skills, core competencies in you as an individual. I've asked Shekinah if she would participate in that program management track. Part of that is when we identified her goals for this year, we said what would be really helpful, and she identified this, what would be really helpful is I had some formal project management or program management training, right? it's a little difficult to just you can Google project management training, but it's typically very logistics based. What's the experience as a program manager in the impact sector? And how do we equip you with those competencies, those skills that whether it is Shekinah with the village or Shekinah with the next organization that she moves on with, that those skills are transferable. And so we want to make sure that as a learning community that we're seeing the value and the assets in cultivating these skills for you as a professional, and then your organization is benefiting from your growth and productivity. I'm going to pause to see if anyone has any initial questions before I show us a few of the modules. If not, give me just a little bit of time, maybe, if I can. There we go. Let's see. Okay, y'all. Uh-oh. Shekinah, are you on here? Can you make me a co-host?
Give me 1 second. There you go.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, y'all, I'm just going to sort of fly through this. I don't think it's in any particular order. This is sort of the last working draft that Alfonso and I used to say, yes, these are the right modules. They may not be in order. This is not a demonstration of the learning pattern. It is more a snapshot of the competencies. Okay, if that makes sense. I'm going to... All right. So we really see this as a learning and development institute for nonprofit professionals. Our goal eventually is to be able to leverage these competencies into a true certification program. But as many of you, I'm sure, know, in order for something to be a true certification, there has to be pre and post and measures, et cetera. While we are measuring progress for this cohort, our priority is to make sure that these competencies and the case studies and our strategy is something that is helpful for our target population before we assume that a certification will be necessary. However, I will say that for those of you who decide to join us for this initial cohort, should a certification be the future on the other side of this program, then we will make sure we offer the assessments that will be necessary for the first group to be able to secure the certification even post-program. So I want to share that. This will not be a you get left out if we decide to bite the bullet and do the legwork for the certification. So it's designed for nonprofit professionals, interactive experiences. We expect that the participants will gain insight into effective leadership strategies, including sustainable fundraising, board engagement, and impactful community development. We're combining practical exercises, real world case studies, and collaborative discussion. So I hope none of those words should feel new based on how I teed up the conversation, to be able to elevate your organization, but really impact your communities. I think we maybe started off with 8 and we ended up with 6 modules. I think our last module we combined because of where we were getting in the timing of the year. We knew that adding sort of another 3 weeks to it could be problematic. So hopefully if you saw the flyer with the preview and the dates, our final date, which is in August, is actually a full day. And that will include sort of an institution or institute graduation, but it'll also serve as sort of our double up for a module. This is a little bit of our why, and I sort of teed this up at the beginning. We've had stakeholder groups who express a need for some upskilling for our impact sector. We know that our leaders lead sort of a startup nonprofits may not have access to some of the skill development opportunities. Y'all are doing all the things. When have you had a time to stop and say, oh yes, let me lean into this core competency necessary for me to be an impactful leader, right? Um, this language may be a little strong. I don't know if I would say though donors are disappointed with the impact of funds. I think that donors have misaligned expectations around what that impact should look like, and this will help to establish expectations on the front end. And when we're thinking about board members participating, because we would love for a board member or two or three of yours to join you, it helps them gain better insight into the holistic sort of ecosystem of your body of work so that as they're getting curious and making demands or requests of you, that it is from a more informed place. So this is Alfonso, who will be joining us. You can see a little bit about his experience, 31 years in nonprofit. Um, he's worked as a coach for executive directors, etc. I've shared that he's been on a board for large entities like HCA. So one of the modules we'll dive into will be just sort of a overview of the nonprofit sector. This will serve as some foundation building for us, really understanding 501(c)(3)s are more than just the tax code themselves, right? Understanding the history of the impact sector, the nonprofit industrial complex, and then sort of bridging that with your mission, vision, and then legal and ethical responsibilities as it relates to your designation as a tax exempt org. Working your plan, this module dives into how we leverage those documents that we oftentimes use as our GPS for our organization, your strategic plan, SMART goals, and for fulfilling grant objectives or obligations. Give me just a second, y'all. So hopefully what you're starting to notice in the way that we are breaking down these modules is that it's not, let's just talk about fundraising, right? Let's just talk about strategic planning. This is a really integrated approach. The idea is how do we help one another connect the threads, the lines, the dots amongst our ecosystem so that we're thinking critically about the full systems of our work, not just compartmentalizing, right? Building and leading effective teams. And so this is both from your staff, your board, who are also volunteers, but then also your volunteers themselves. How do you best leverage and be good stewards of the human capital that you have available for you? We couple sort of fundraising, marketing, comms, PR into a broader storytelling umbrella, which actually tracks with the Village's learning tracks. If you've been keeping up with our sort of recent unfoldings as we've been talking about streamlining our offerings and tightening up our data collection. So for these cohorts, we will talk about the power of storytelling, and that is how we will unpack some of the competencies around fundraising, telling your story for through technology, diversifying your funding strategies, your donor relationships, and then of course from a PR and marketing perspective, how do you elevate the story and narrative of your work to deeply engage with community, to make sure that you have solid brand and communication recognition, and that your media and PR relations and community are solid. We'll dive into some innovative programming. This is a place that I know Alfonso is really excited about. We think about program design, program evaluation and monitoring, continuous improvement, technology and innovation. All of this will be encompassed in our innovative programming module. And so if you're thinking about your program design and evaluation cycle, for instance, this is where we'll get to talk about that in regards with with an innovative lens. Budgeting and financial reporting. It is what it is. We need to make sure we get the numbers right. We have a plan. And then also, what are our strategies for making decisions, especially based on financial positioning? This piece elevated in priority, of course, giving our current administrative landscape. knowing and also knowing that many of our nonprofits are smaller, on the smaller side, and that that $5,000 matters quite a bit. And so how are you positioning your organization to be able to have a process for your decision making so that when in crisis you're able to move with more efficiency? Personal development and growth. I sort of hate that this is at the end because we definitely want to make sure that this is a priority. How do we stay well during this work? So from a professional development perspective, from a work-life balance, thinking about your network. And so this is how are you maintaining yourself and prioritizing your well-being, your growth and development and balance within the work. So I believe those are the modules. Here are the competencies that we will make sure are incorporated. These are those competencies that I named at the very beginning that are research and data driven and informed. So there's a full body of research that we will make sure that everyone has access to the reference points. But these are part of those competencies that are recognized globally for impact sector leaders. And so we want to make sure that we are being explicit about the upskilling, not just from a module perspective, but then where are we actually actively increasing your competence? So here are sort of a general profile of how we're looking at the various cohorts. So one level of cohort, as I named, is really that sort of executive director level, some org that maybe has a larger budget. It may not um uh the 1 million mark may not be true or not, but that there's a budget that you're responsible for. Maybe haven't had formal exposure to this type of full learning trajectory within nonprofit, right? But we know that there's some immediate benefits, and then there's also some stakeholders who would be interested in investing in your success. We would like for everyone to have an accountability partner along the journey. And we can dive deeper into what that looks like, but I mentioned it earlier. Maybe it's a board member, maybe it is another colleague, maybe it is a partner from a collaborating organization, right? To make sure that they're present to be a part of it. They may not be able to attend the kickoff session. Again, we can dive into some details because of the timing, but just at least having that seed planted that there will need to be someone else who is at least a part of this journey with you for one session. The other member profile type, as I've named before, is someone maybe at the program manager level, or honestly, the title doesn't matter, y'all. If you are responsible for a body of work, right? You hold some type of influence and some type of autonomy over decision making, over budget allocation, or it could be the execution, right, of your work, depending on the hierarchy. That there is someone else in leadership that is invested in your success, and that there is some type of upward mobility possibility. It may not be immediate, but there is a trajectory that should you decide and the stars align, that there's an opportunity for some type of growth within your organization. We too ask that there's accountability partner. Again, we are open to negotiating what that looks like. So those are the official words about our Promising Leaders cohort. Um, from a logistics perspective, there are the dates that have already been listed. I won't waste time trying to toggle back and forth between my screens, y'all. But I know Shekinah's done a great job of listing out the dates and times. The groups will meet from, I think it's 8:30 to 12:30, with the exception of the very last session. We ask that folks don't miss more than one. We would really, there's such rich information in only 7 sessions. We were intentional about the 3 weeks in between so that you have time for homework, you have time for new unfoldings that you can bring back to us to be thought partners with you around, and it gives some time for integration. We will make sure that there are touch points and office hours that are available to you so that this is not a stagnant experience that only when you show up in the room, but that you feel that it is able to be integrated into your day to day in whatever way it makes sense for you. And so I've said a lot of words for about 25 minutes now. So I'm going to pause and see if anyone on the call has a question for me or a question that you think somebody else may have that wasn't. The meetings are in person. We are meeting in person at the Community Foundation. If there's another question that maybe you think someone else who's listening to the recording may want to hear, feel free to ask on behalf of our collective.
Erica, I wanted to know what is the thing that people will have at the end of this? Is it a certificate? Is it a certificate of completion? Um, is it I just wanted to get some clarity around it.
Yeah, so they will, program participants will receive a certificate of completion. You can also name that you are a graduate of the promising. So when I participate in different leadership programs, it may not be a certification, but obviously I'll get a certificate and then I can name that program or that initiative, right, on my resume or when I'm having conversations about future opportunities and being able to reference it. So we will also make sure that the ways in which folks want to be able to leverage their participation makes sense for you. We are here to make this as much of a viable and an asset-based resource as possible. And so we are happy to take suggestions and recommendations on also what are some of the ways that it can be noted as a program or project or initiative that you've completed.
And is there a deadline for registration?
We'd love for folks to register as soon as possible. We start the class the 18th, Chicago,
I
19th.
thought it was the 21st.
It is. I'm making up stuff. It's the following week, that the week of the 20th something. Um, are we sure? Hold on, y'all. Yeah, so right now the first session is scheduled for the 18th and 19th of March. Um, if that timing does not seem to work for people because it is such a quick turnaround, then we can think about moving the start date back to the next, whatever the next one was on the calendar. I think the April date and modifying some things. But we'll have to do some scheduling Jenga at Community Foundation. The sooner folks can register, the better able we'll be able to meet everyone's needs to see what type of accommodations or shifting we need to do with the calendar.
Okay, got you. And is there a limit to how many people within one organization can participate? I know you mentioned that
Mhm.
you highly encourage people to get like a board member involved or, their program managers involved.
Yeah, so no limit. Obviously we want some diversity in the room, but if this will be helpful for three of your program directors and sign all three of them up. We would love, I think it would only deepen their experience to be in a room with their colleagues so then they can think about what are the best ways to leverage their learning together while growing individually. And I also want to be clear, the expectation is not for you to have a board member or someone that you report to with you and present every single session. We just want to know that there is someone else who is invested in your experience that can be integrated and we can figure out the best ways. For some folks, they don't really want them. We want to honor boundaries and limitations based on each organization. And so we want to make this as accessible as possible without saying these are the parameters.
Hmm. Okay, gotcha.
Any other questions for you or on behalf of the group?
So both both cohort classes are in person And what's the address? Where's the location at? What's the address?
Yeah, so all sessions will be held, and maybe we need to update some of the material, Shekinah. All sessions will be held at the Community Foundation. And so the address is 3421. I'm putting it.
I'm dropping it in the chat.
Okay. Shekinah, show me in chat. 3421 Belmont Boulevard. So I apologize, y'all, that we left that off of the information. So everything will take place at the Community Foundation building. It is in Green Hills, and we will be in person.
So Erica, my organization actually helps nonprofits within Nashville with like their office support, but I'm actually based in Charlotte. So I'm wondering, do you have any virtual opportunities where I might be able to still tap in to be able to assist?
Yeah, that's a great question. Will you send me an email
Yep.
and let's chat?
Okay.
I I'm typing while I'm talking. There you go. Erika at cfmt.org. Um, Yeah, in your instance, let's figure out if there's even just like, okay, we keep keep a Zoom link open, right? If folks are local, we need them in person.
Okay.
Hybrid just gets, y'all know, we've been living this life.
Right.
Hybrid is not fun. Um, but in your instance, I could absolutely see, especially if you are supporting folks who are here local, how even if you're able to absorb some of that information, right, and be even a fly in the room could be really helpful and impactful. So I would love to figure out if it will work. And if so, what are the logistics? So reach out. So let's chat.
Okay, I'll go ahead and do that. I'm looking at that first cohort. I think that fits perfectly with my schedule, so I'll reach out to you. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you for asking. Anyone else? I appreciate y'all joining. I know it was a very quick turnaround and last minute. I am going to be out of the office next week, and I wanted to make sure that folks had a chance to get at least this recording and this information, but while you're making some decisions.
Thank you for your time and presenting the information.
Absolutely. Thank y'all for joining. Shekinah will make sure that this recording is posted on our YouTube, and then the link will be on our social media pages. So if you know someone who you think fits this bill, please direct them to the video so that they can have more words and coloring to this experience. Y'all, we would love to see lots of old friends and plenty of new ones. This was a pretty hefty investment on the part of our board member and community advocate. And so help us with proof of concept, right? Like, let's see what really happens when we unapologetically focus on upskilling for Black or primarily Black serving nonprofit and nonprofit leaders in our community and meeting them exactly at their point of need. So please help us make sure that this is a success. We would love for you to be there if you can carve out the time and make it worth your while and applicable for you. I'm gonna give y'all 20 minutes back and reclaim a little of my time as well. We will make sure that the recording is accessible. And if you need me, Erika at cfmt.org. You can also reach out to Village at cfmt.org, and we will try to be as responsive as possible.
Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Same to you. Y'all be well.
Thanks, Erica. Sorry I'm late. I'll get with Shekinah and get the recording posted today.
Perfect. Thanks, Ashley.
No problem. Have a good day. Bye.
You too.
Thank
Bye,
you.
good people.